My name is Kath Smyth. My job is the horticulturist for the Calgary Horticultural Society. I have over the years made friends with so many of our members and have had several wonderful chats as it goes along, and having to live now in this virtual reality that I live in with the garlic, etc. I haven't had the usual time that I can go and visit gardens, although I've snuck into a few community gardens and poked around. I will admit to that. But let's talk about planting garlic. How many of you have planted garlic before? Good. Have you any varieties that you're particularly fond of? No? Don't hear anybody? I have in past been planting myself. I liked music, but it didn't get big enough for my mind. And I want big garlic, and when I look back at what Adam from Parkland Peonies has back there, I'm going, I have failed. I have failed myself. So I am switching varieties. I'm going to go away from them. As you may or may not know, there are several types of garlic. There are several varieties within the types of garlic. So when we talk about garlic, it's a question of making some choices. And I really, really enjoy some of them. I'm a big fan of the rocambos, which are a bigger one. They have a lovely skin to them. I'm still going to look a little bit, but Russian is one that I'm really fond of. But I read an article the other day, and I was chatting with a friend of mine, and she was saying that the Asiatic garlic, they may be small, but oh my goodness, apparently they figure that that's why the Chinese started having fire-breathing dragons. Because when you eat that garlic, it burns your mouth out, and you think you're going to spit flames. So it's part and parcel of the whole profile of garlic in my mind. I look at it and I go, wow. When you've grown your garlic, have you had things like when they make the garlic scape, when they make that curl at the top? Have you not known what that was for? Have you just let it grow? And if you have you had things happen like the curl turning into a seed? See, now ordinarily at this point I'd hand it around to you so you could see. But these are the scapes, and then they make seed. And some people pick it while it's purple, and the purple part is extremely flavorful. But when you're looking at the scapes and you end up with the first phase of it and it goes purple, and it literally has curled in and under, and if it gets to that stage, that's when you cut it off. Oh my goodness, the flavor on the scape alone, which you pick in July, is worth the price of admission. And once you start sauteing with them and using them in your garden, you're going to go, oh dear, why haven't I discovered that? But they're called a bulbul, and they create and dry to this lovely white seed. And you can plant these, and in 2 years, you're going to have garlic bulbs. So it's worth trying to save some. I save some on my kitchen counter. It's hard to resist not eating them though, because they are so tasty. So I set some aside for seed, which I'm nowhere near as good as the growers, so I have to admit that I will go to the growers and buy my bulbs, because I have played around with the seeds and they're fabulous. I am going to lay it on the table, and if you want to walk by and take a look, and we have some that have seeded themselves into the garden over the years. And they do still seed all over the garden, and we go, oh my goodness. And so this is a crop, this is our crop from the office, and ordinarily these get taken to the share. Some of these we are going to take apart and plant into our beds. Our beds are 10 feet by 10 feet, and we grew far more than this. Our garden shed smells. So you have to sort of, okay, what am I going to do? And back in the day when we first started doing this, we used to keep it in the basement in the house at the office. And you'd walk into the house and you'd see people going, what is that? And it made your eyes water. So today, what I wanted to talk a little bit and touch on is you're going to make your purchases from the vendors, and you're looking at the garlic, and you're going to want to take it apart to plant it. And you want to make sure the skin is intact. You want to get at least the skin intact. And what I usually do is I keep a soft cloth on my table, and I take it and I put it between my fingers, and I give it a good firm schmuck. Then it comes apart quite easily. But by the time you've bared it, you can usually get into the neck, the hard neck. So it'll snap off, and then you're able to just take them apart, and they're set to go. And when I'm planting them, and you see I've got a bit of a beard left, I've got a bit of the platform of the garlic left, and it'll just gently peel away, and you'll have the circle at the bottom. And what will happen is you're going to plant these, and you're going to plant them deep. You're going to go down at least 6 inches and plant them. And you're going to plant them pointed end up. This is the bottom. All bulbs, garlic included, are what they call geotropic. They'll grow, if you plant them this way, they'll spend most of the summer trying to grow a leaf going that way. So you got to get them right side up. And that is, dig your soil, add some fresh compost, get them down at least 6 inches, and plant them right way up. And I like to space mine. Some people grow them really close, like 2 and 3 inches closer, and they do grow okay, but these were planted 2 to 3 inches closer, and what you will find is the bulbs aren't as big. They get a little bit smaller because they're a bit crowded, but if you space some of the bigger ones out, you're going to get big bulbs, big cloves, big production from it. So spacing them apart, I try to go 6 inches deep, 4 inches apart, and I get good bulbs. And I try, this is one of those plants that really appeals to my, I don't know, I'm a Libra, everything has to balance. So this really appeals to my Libra because I can make nice, straight rows, and it just appeals to me. So I like that part of it when I'm planting. So as the average person, I plant for myself and my sister. I used to only plant a 6-foot row. Now she's discovered garlic and fresh from the garden, so she wants a 12-foot row. So now I have even more garlic. But I will tell you that I just used the last of the garlic from last year. I only used it up in June. So it's one of those crops that you can keep going with. And what I like about hardneck garlic is how well it keeps, how well it does sitting on my kitchen counter. I just enjoy it. The only thing is, don't overpopulate the upstairs because the garlic fragrance is inimitable. It's the word comes to my mind. So when you've planted them and you've got them in place, just gently pat them into place so that they get some nice soil firmed around them. And I will quite often go out just slightly from the row and go along with my trowel and tighten the soil a bit so that the soil will fill all the cavities so that it grows larger. So I look at that and I go, wow, this is just great. So I've got that going on, and then the next part of it is I'm going to water them. And you do have to water them at first. When you first put them in place, water them. And then investigate mulch. Get some mulch on them. We tend to use leaves. I like leaves. Don't use wood mulch. The worst thing you can do for it. So use leaf mulch. Put it on about that deep. And then you're just going to water them and stay. And if we continue with a dry, frozen winter, we should be great. And then they'll start to show up about the first week in April. Maybe the second if we get no snow cover. And you'll start to see the lovely green, and you'll start to see that the leaves are still there. Leave the leaves on. We can have some very dry spring times. So you want to make sure that you've got good mulch on them, good soil, and they should just grow for you. And they will grow up beautifully. I just love them. They're one of those crops that you can put in and you get such success with. And it gives you such a feeling. So you're going to watch them grow, and they're going to start to come up. And by mid-June, you're going to see even more, but you've pulled away the mulch because you don't want them to get too much wet. And usually we get what I call monsoon June. Well, this year we had monsoon June, monsoon July, So we want to watch that we're pulling away the mulch a bit so that they don't get too wet, because you don't want them to rot. And then you're going to get what I was talking about in July. You'll see the scapes start to form, usually mid-July, end of July. Ours in our garden didn't come till nearly the end of July because of all the moisture and not much heat. The scape will form, it will come up, and it'll do this gorgeous triple curl to it. Cut the scape off if you so choose. I find by taking the scape off, I'm getting a bigger bulb. So I will take my scapes off. And then the chef in you will take over, and you'll want to start doing cooking with it. And that'll give you the first taste of what you're going to first take out. About mid-August, you're going to harvest. And you're going to hang them to dry, as we do in our shed. We hang these. And then what we do is I take, and I tell people this, don't wash them off, but we dry them and hang them to dry so that they will get nice and clean. But you're still not going to clean these skins off. You want to leave that on. So you let them dry off, you clean the soil off, and then you can make the choice to either leave them hanging in your kitchen or cut these off and just tie them together, and it works either way. I find that what I like to do is to leave a bit of a stem because I can keep them tied together. And I leave a string on them in the basement because I have a smallish cold room in the back corner, so I hang them there and they do quite well, and that's why I find that they last so long. So you've pulled, you've harvested, you've dried, and then the anticipation is the first taste. So what garlic recipe do you really want to make? Well, that's always hard for me, but I do like that pesto basil mix for my first recipe, and that's usually what I'll make, and I really enjoy that. I love garlic in Caesar salads, so I'm a big fan of that. And actually, once you start using some of this garlic, you find recipes for it. You look for recipes. So you're going to watch these garlics. You're going to pick some of your crop because this crop is self-replenishing. You can start adding and subtracting, and you can pick the best bulbs and grow them yourself. Although I always look and I go, okay, well, there's the month of September, 4 maybe in September, and then 4 May. So sometimes I don't want to give mine back to my garden. I just go buy it. I just go get more because I want to try new varieties. So you just repeat the process. The other thing that I like is rich compost for fertilizing, and I do find that fertilizing them is tricky sometimes, so I don't. So the suggestions from the experts, Forage and Farm and Parkland, Peonies, is the fact that they're not heavy consumers of fertilizer, but rotating your crop, like never planting your garlic in the same place twice, and or compost tea. I love compost tea, and that's literally taking your compost and creating a tea from it and using it as a foliar application in June and July, and it really, really aids the flavor and the development. And when you see these folks' garlic, you know what kind of product you're going to get. But rotate, foliar, feed, and that's probably the best thing you can do. So, any questions for me? No, you don't want to stake them. You want to plant them deep enough. If you're not planting them deep enough, they will fall over. And making sure the soil's patted, and that's why I go around with my trowel and I hoe. And when I'm weeding, I always weed towards, I use my hoe and I go and I weed towards the garlic so that it keeps the soil building up. You're going to plant the whole clove, and you're going to go down 6 inches at least. And then the side of the house, I prefer to put mine in full sun. So they need at least 6 hours of sunlight, and they do much better in that. So that should help you out. One clove will produce 1 bulb. One bulb, 1 clove. So from a bulb, you're going to get, in some varietals, you'd get 6 cloves. In some varietals, you get 4 cloves. So that's why I want to grow so that this particular bulb that I broke open, 8 cloves. So I'm going to get 8 bulbs of garlic. So in the first year that you plant the seed garlic, you're going to get small bulbs. Then in the second year, you're going to get the bigger bulbs. So they have to replenish their stock somehow. So these are how they get from seed to bulb, but it takes 2 years to do that. So that's what the difference is. Culinary garlic is anything this big and bigger that you can actually start using right away. Companions for garlic, well, don't plant them with your squash. The squash will crowd them out. But the best companion that I've seen done is with tomatoes, and I've seen it done with roses, and they do quite well. But you want to plant them with singular plants. You don't want to do big rows of them. And I tend to do garlic around rose bushes back in the day because it really did help the aphid population. What happens with slugs is that right now is when they're laying their eggs. Right now is when they're traversing your garden and trying to find new places. But they're far more interested in beds that have rock near them or a heavier thing than mulch. So the leaf mulch is lighter and it tends to billow away, and they won't get in there and lay their eggs because actually you're going to plant this probably next week or the week after when the weather cools off. By then the slugs are done. And they're done in my yard because I had a major slug fest the other day. So I'm getting there. But one of the things you can do to maybe as a precaution is maybe around the edges of the mulch put some diatomaceous earth, which is crushed shells, or start eating lots of eggs and crushing eggshells really fine and putting it through it. But next spring is when you may have to watch them a little bit, but that won't hurt them.
Oh, actually, I've been seeing a lot of large bulbs this year and last year, and I think it's because that we planted from seed about 4 years ago. And so planting from seed, so instead of cutting the scapes off, we collected all the seed and we collected the largest seed that we could find. And we planted about 10,000 maybe seed, and collected it after the second year. We left it in the ground the second year and they collected it that fall. But when you plant from seed, it returns the vigor back into the bulb. And so what we're seeing is larger bulbs consistently over the last couple of years. So the first year you don't remove the seed, you just keep it in the soil, and then it's the second year that you actually lift it, and then you want to space it out because when you plant from seed, you plant it very close together.
Yeah.
Because the bulbs themselves, the tiny seed bulbs, are very small. But after the second year, you want to space it out so the bulb starts to size.
Not if you're using good, clean bulbs. They're meant to be regrown from bulbs as it is, and the fact that you can keep regrowing them is easy for them. And really and truly, the way we got a lot of this garlic is because our forefathers brought it with them on the boat. And we've gradually introduced even some really interesting, more and more heritage hardneck garlic, and it's becoming a preferred crop of choice, but it doesn't lose its vigor, not at all. No. For starters, lily beetles only go after lily plants or a family thereof, but it won't discourage them and it won't put them off. The only thing I've found that it works against and helps is aphids, and that's about the only preventative measure. And the reason that people plant garlic around some things like tomatoes and with roses, it increases the flowering, and in the tomato it increases the flavor. It helps the flavor. You can't really, although I have seen people who grow them from seed and leave that container for 2 years and they get garlic cloves the next year. They may not be as big, but they're there. But the trick is that we get that freezing and defrosting, and that causes the soil to dry out and compact. And no amount of mulching on the surface is going to protect the root ball in the potato bag. So the seeding of them with some mulch on top, you'll get the little ones the first year. You'll have to be patient with that potato bag, and then you're going to have to figure out how to protect it from the crosswinds. And that's probably the thing. Softneck garlic is the garlic that you can buy in most of the garden centers. It's usually spring. It's when it comes in the spring, and it comes in, and it is the stuff you buy in the grocery stores. It's good. There's nothing wrong with it, and I wish I could remember their names off the top of the head, but you can get softneck garlic at the grocery store, buying it in the bulbs from China, or you can go to the garden center and buy softneck garlic like the elephant garlic, and it's a softneck. You can try, but it's not going to fulfill the bulb. It's not going to turn into a full bulb, and it might be teeny tiny, and it may take longer than you like. I grow onions, green onions, in my vases just to have green onion, but all you'll get is the top. You won't get much of a bulb. You plant it in a row, and you plant them quite close together. The seeds get planted maybe 2 inches apart. Garlic, like most all bulbs, likes that cold period even from seed, so they've got to go through what we call cold vernalization. So if they don't get vernalized, they don't do as well. Wait about 2 weeks and get them in. They like that cold start, and it helps to aid the root systems. We have planted our garlic in our raised beds at the back of the Hort Society. We didn't make any differentiation between the edge, and they were fine. We had a great crop. We even had some really nice big garlic in that raised bed, so it was worth doing. And yes, but make sure you mulch. Make sure you mulch. Absolutely. Get it in the ground soon and get it down at least that 6 inches deep. It's really important. All of these garlics have a medicinal property to them. The bigger cloves do. I know Russian red does. I know that there's 2 porcelains. The white rooted ones have way more medicinal property to them. I grew up with my friend whose mother believed in the medicinal properties of them, so much so that her brother was a football player, and she used to crush the garlic cloves and make a paste, and he had to wear that in his socks so he didn't get athlete's foot. And that was a hard Russian garlic, and that has good allicins in it. Really and truly, the rocamboles, which are they are the very best of the tastes, and they really truly are. And they have some great members to the family, but they're really quite large. But probably out of my favorites are the Italian rocambole and the Russian red. I don't want to grow stripe anymore, and the Ukrainian rocambole, but they have the best taste. They're considered a culinary garlic. And then the marbled purple stripes, which there's one called Fireball. Whew. You know how they have that ad on TV about the hot sandwiches at that restaurant? Well, I went to one of the local food suppers about 3 years ago, and one of the guys was using Fireball. And it has an also known as name called the nudist. Well, I think the reason they call it that is because you want to strip your clothes off. But anyway, but they are medium, and they are really, really good, but the scape is the best tasting part of those guys. And the porcelains are my other one that I see the most readily available, and I do like those ones. They are really, really varied in their heat. So that's the differences between a lot of them. I mean, really, the ones that I see the most often available are those ones. So those would give you an idea of the flavor spread on them. Compost tea is literally you use something to create a tea bag, if you will, and you use a sack, and you put the compost in it, and you fill up a big bucket of water, and you just put this in like a tea bag, and you leave it to steep for 4 or 5 days, and that creates a compost tea. Then you use it as a watering for the foliar and for the soil. And it's just basically a fertilizer that's natural, and it doesn't interfere with the taste. You can use coffee grounds in your compost. Do not use coffee grounds straight into your soil. It robs nitrogen out of the soil, so you want to mix your compost into your coffee grounds into your soil. It's really, really valuable for that. Tea bags, coffee grounds into your soil. Well, I'm going to say thank you so much